So thank you, everyone, for coming to this, this developers conference. Today, we are going to be discussing NFTs. And we have quite a group of projects here, and representatives from the projects, I should say, that... Wow, is it just me or the acoustics really bad? So we have quite a few different people here from different projects who will be discussing what their projects do, what's useful about them, and how they see the future of NFTs. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Bill Laboon. I'm head of education and grants at Web3 Foundation. And I will let each of the people here give a small introduction of themselves and the projects they're representing. So why don't we start with Gabe at the end and come this way. It's up to you.
Hey, I'm Gabe. I'm head of development at Invarch. I'm one of the co-founders. And what we do is we focus on the creator economy. So we don't necessarily build NFT primitives directly. We focus on leveraging these NFTs to build something more with them. So our standard protocol actually wraps NFTs with a DAO. So you can fractionalize them easily. You can make communities based around NFTs with NFT gating and all of that. And we don't really force any kind of use case. So, for example, one of our projects is called GitArch, which is it's an alternative to Git hosting like GitHub and GitLab. Like GitHub and GitLab. And we use NFTs on chain with this DAO wrapper to make repositories where the key owners are actually owners of the repository. You don't have to go through a third party to decide who gets to modify your code. So all of that is based on NFTs on chain, which shows that they can be extremely flexible.
Nice. I represent Unique Network. This is the NFT chain, NFT parachain, both in Kusama and Polkadot. We've been working a lot on things to make simpler to integrate with us. We built SDK that allows many applications, not just JavaScript-based ones, mobile applications and so on. We've built a wallet that handles our NFTs, the scanner. This is all open source, and any project can borrow the code and utilize it. So we're thinking this is a big step to mass adoption. Also, we many who worked with us know we provide gasless transactions for users, so that owning and transfer NFT is painless for users. This is another big step to mass adoption. So basically, we're trying to position ourselves as an NFT parachain, NFT infrastructure for a great number of people, great number of end users.
Hi everyone, I'm Jeffrey Ekman. I work at Ternoa, which is an NFT-centric substrate chain. Our goal is to make the way we build NFT really easy, because right now it's when you want to make an NFT, you need to do a smart contract, do it every time, audit it every time. Same thing for everything around it. Every time you want to add a feature, you need to go with smart contracts, etc., etc. We decided to go on Substrate to make palettes and make it really easy to use. We build the SDK with that, and with it, with only a few lines of code, 2 or 3 lines of codes, you can basically build a collection of NFT, build a marketplace. So yeah, that's our main focus, is to make the NFT really accessible to users and also to builders. And I'm also the CTO of the Capsule Corp Labs, which is the labs of Ternoa. It can be seen like Consensus and Ethereum. So basically, we are developing the whole ecosystem around Ternoa, but also around Substrate blockchain.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So the first question that I have for all of you is what interesting things are NFTs being used for today? I think everyone in the audience is familiar with the classic NFT as profile picture, but can you explain some interesting things that NFTs are being used for in gaming, in the metaverse, how perhaps other verticals that I'm not aware of? So why don't we always just go, starting from Gabe,
Yeah.
over.
So as I was saying before in the introduction, we have an app called GitArch, and we use NFTs to actually store Git objects from the Git database, like the data you would actually send to a host, to a Git host like GitHub, and all of those are then meshed with metadata, and we can actually rebuild the entire repository when you clone it in the CLI or in the browser with an emulated file system. So we can actually replace the whole concept of having a centralized Git hosting just by using Web3 storage with on-chain NFTs, and that never ever touches any centralized server. It goes from IPFS to the chain to the browser. Yeah, and from there we can build a lot of different things with NFTs. If you boil NFTs down to what they really are, they are just index data on chain. So you can actually, you don't have to trust that this person is the owner of this data and this person is in control of this project or this collection. So there's so much that can be built, and it's really not limited to just art. We can do anything with the data and indexing on chain.
Cool. And so NFTs, well, they can represent a profile picture, like you say, but I think many of us understand that NFTs are not the pretty pixelated pictures anymore. They represent ownership. So this is certificate of ownership. And what is ownership? Ownership is is experience. If I own some item, it means I can experience it. And experience is always four-dimensional. It's if I have some experience today, it doesn't mean I'm going to have the same experience tomorrow. And at any point in time, it changes. NFT can represent a ticket to a metaverse game, for example. Why games are so successful? What is the key to success of a game? Any game provides different experience every time every player plays it. It never repeats. So does the ownership of an NFT ticket. Or you can, another example, you can have a 3D sculpture and you can create your own experience. You can look at the sculpture from any direction, from any distance, and basically create your own view of the piece of art. So that's what makes NFTs important. So that, by the way, it answers the question: why should I buy an NFT when I just can right-click, right? So that's exactly why, because it's experience. So I think that's the answer to your question.
Yeah, and also I will add that most of the NFTs with profile pictures, but not also with gaming, are also tied with speculation mostly, and that NFT are much more than that. As you said, it's about ownership. It's about proving you have this piece of NFT, and it can give you a lot of utility from that. As you said, there is ticketing, but it touches every sector, every domain. One example we have with one of our clients, they have a 3D environment, and you have to connect your wallet, and depending on the NFT you have, you will be able to access some part of this 3D environment. It is just an example, but actually we can have thousands of different utilities, and not just buying an NFT to sell it at a higher price, but really using the powerful use of the NFTs and giving them utility and not just speculation.
All right, yeah, thank you, everyone. So that's sort of what NFTs are being used for, and there's some really interesting use cases, that I just heard there. But especially speaking from like a technology or feature perspective, like what kind of new, exciting things are your projects or just the ecosystem in general working on for the next generation of NFTs, right? So how are we going to see them improved? How, what kinds of things are you working on to make NFTs better? Actually, why don't we go reverse order this time, so Gabe's not always put on the spot.
So yeah, as I said, in one word, in my opinion, it's utility. We need to give people the incentive to use NFT, and the incentive is not just speculation, is, okay, you can do a lot of things with NFT. So if we provide that, if we provide an infrastructure, an environment where builders and users can do a lot of things, then I think we have done our job well. And so the primitives we are building around that is to make it accessible. So that's why we made palettes to let users, if they want to make a collection, in 5 minutes they can make a collection of NFTs. If they want to allow lending and borrowing, they can do that also. So we are building all of these primitives, and some of the leading edge features we are building, it's called the secret NFT. So basically, when you create an NFT, it's public to everyone, at least if you upload it on IPFS, for example, or the media is public. But with the secret NFT, we have another media, and this one is encrypted. It is stored on IPFS, but encrypted with your secret keys. And so you can have secret NFT, an NFT that is on-chain, secured by the blockchain, but that is only viewable by the owner of the NFT. So that's one primitive we are developing. Another one is the rental NFT. So everyone knows, I think, about renting, lending, borrowing NFT, but on Ethereum, for example, so you have to put a collateral to have an NFT in exchange. But what we developed here is much more powerful because you can see it like a contract in real life. You don't have to put a collateral to lend something. You just have to set the rule of the contract, lend your NFT for free. It is much more secure because the NFT doesn't leave your wallet. It is still your own NFT, and you're just giving the right of seeing it and using it in another wallet. And you can also, for this type of contract, you can basically have something like, let's say, a Netflix subscription as decentralized Netflix subscription, because this kind of contract can be used for renting, but for also lending, for subscription, and things like that.
Yeah, that's very cool. That's interesting. Yeah. Greg?
Yeah, I think NFTs can represent just about anything in this world because most of the objects are unique. Well, the only thing that's missing most of the time in all implementation, like ERC 721, look at the contract. What's missing? We have one missing piece is the relationship between NFTs. So that's why we recently delivered nesting. You can build bundles of NFTs, and you can build the whole trees. The engineers will like it. And also, like Gabe said, so we have refractionalization. We're going to launch the campaign soon, that long-awaited campaign when we refractionalize a CryptoPunk. We actually are going to bring the CryptoPunk from Ethereum to our chain through the bridge. Well, it's kind of a homemade bridge, but it's safe. And that's another thing we're going to do soon. And like I said, we're delivering very many pieces off-chain that's important, because that's only small work that needs to be done on-chain, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done off-chain to help applications integrate with us.
So I actually think in the immediate future we'll see the rise of actual communities gated by NFTs and with permissions, roles, everything based on composable NFTs. We kind of have some of those already around in a lot of ecosystems, but those are not actually true on-chain communities like DAOs, for example. where these communities exist somewhere off-chain and they're not actually enforced by chain rules. So you have these NFTs, let's say, it doesn't even have to be art, it can just be like a multiplier of voting power, something like that. And it can just give you voting power in that community, but then you don't actually, well, right now, you don't actually enforce that in those communities. That exists on chain just for some moderator to check if you actually have that. So I actually think that the next step for NFTs is to take that to the next level, introduce DAOs, introduce real execution from the chain, real checks with the NFTs, and actually have the community run itself and not someone who claims to be the moderator of it or the founders.
Okay, wow. So we have like secretization of NFTs. We have fractionalization. We have community usage and interaction with NFTs. So it sounds. Oh, sorry. All right. Yeah, I forgot who I was for a second when the screen went away. So yeah, it sounds like there's all kinds of interest. I'm actually very curious now to look into how all of these things will work from a technical perspective. So now that we've talked about what technically we can see happening in the future, can you tell me like some of the ways you think that NFTs will be used, like from an end user perspective? Maybe using these technologies we've just discussed, and preferably things that maybe we haven't thought about or aren't in the common narrative. Like what specific end use cases will we see for these? So, why don't we start? Greg has never gone first.
Sure, yeah. If you've been to Madrid, have you been to Madrid recently? You can look, well, you can walk on the streets and see how guys are selling fake Gucci purses, for example. I think the accessories industry really needs NFTs. If they put a QR code on every purse that will open the profile or DID page of the owner, it's going to be really, really nice for them because, well, the fake items are not going to work anymore, especially for the ones. And I know there's a lot of people who care if it's real Gucci or fake. By the way, this also opens the secondary market opportunity because Gucci can collect royalties on that, and we can enforce these royalties. I know, well, there's still debate on royalties should be enforced or not, but we'll see. But OpenSea opened this Pandora box. They are enforcing royalties, and we'll see what happens. I'm really curious to see myself, but but yeah, I think these kind of markets really need NFTs. This is going to be a really big thing for them.
Yeah. Everything that can be transferred, everything that should be transferable in the real world should become NFT based in the future. And it goes for anything from property, like if you want to sell your car, like if in the perfect world, a perfect Web3 world, that the ownership of that car should be tied to an NFT. And it goes for every single industry. Let's say, for example, you have access to an online account, a social media account, for example. Access to that account should be an NFT. You shouldn't have to type a password because if you just want to pass that to someone else, you send them the NFT. If you want to commercialize that account, why stop the user? Why make them behave in a specific way? If they want to sell that, trade that NFT. So everything that should be transferable property will be an NFT in the future.
Oh, that's a very broad vision. Anything that can be transferred via NFT. Wow, yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a great transition because one use case we have, it's also about transferring. We'll say it's like transferring memories. We are creating actually a time capsule, which also lies with the secret things. And basically, it's making an NFT where you can store data you want to be transmitted to your friends, your family, to anyone. And you can set a protocol and say, like, okay, I put everything in my life in that capsule. I want this to be secure on the blockchain. and be sent only in 1 year, at this date, or at the time of my death. And at this moment, then the capsule will be sent to the recipient I decided to be the capsule to be sent to. That's one use case people don't really think about. I mean, not so much people think about transmission unless they are getting old or sick. But really, we can trigger this kind of use case, really interesting use case, because you do not have to worry, for example, about where will my data go if I die? Will this data be stuck on one centralized storage, or how can I be sure that everything I want to transmit be transmitted? And I think it's one use case that is interesting for future generations.
All right. Thank you. So the last question that I have, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. So Polkadot, I'm sorry, I feel like my microphone went out for a second. As you all know, is very much about the concept of interoperability. So, sorry, I think maybe I should just yell. Is this one working? Yeah. So Polkadot, as you know, is very much about interoperability. Is there anything that you would like to say about interoperability with your specific projects, that NFTs, like how they can interoperate with each other or other chains or smart contracts, anything else in the system? I know like there's been a little bit of discussion about this already, especially with like interaction with community and like secret, but I'm just curious if there's any sort of final thoughts on interoperability that you'd want to cover. Jeffrey, why don't you go first?
There are several things about that, about interoperability. The first thing is interoperability with NFTs, because when you want to have interoperability, you need to have some standards defined, because you can make as many NFT standards you want. If you want one NFT to be compatible with another blockchain, they need to use the same standard, or at least support both standards. And that's the first thing. We need to define a standard for NFTs. We define one. I guess Unique Network define one too. I think in the end we will be able to have one that is used by everyone, and we will be able to have a true interoperability about NFT.
Yeah, but I think Unix palette sets the standard pretty well. If you've seen the the new Unix palette, the version 2, it's much more advanced than it used to be in the first version, and it has some pretty nice things. We can use it as a standard. And I think it will become standard because well, everybody's going to use state mine, state mint as kind of a base. But really, interoperability greatly depends on the projects we have in the ecosystem by the time it comes to real interoperability. Because NFT can represent anything, and it can represent, like for example, digital identity. It's a perfect use case for interoperability, because digital identity doesn't have to come on every chain. It's one time is enough, and it can be represented for NFT. And if NFT can be minted on one network and digital identity stores data on the other. Another good use case I can come up with, like let's say for example there is a parachain for real estate. They can focus on real estate things, on the buildings, apartments, and so on. Maybe some MLS type of feature, but they don't need to focus on mass minting. That we can take care of it.
All right, thanks, Gabe.
I actually have a different opinion on standardizations. I believe it is important that different projects have different standards. It's if you always try to get one single standard, what ends up happening is you now have one more competing product, one more competing standard, and it always ends up to that. You cannot just try and force everyone to do the same thing. So what I think is great about Polkadot and XCM, more specifically, is that we have the ability to make interfaces for these. We can make a patterned interface for these different standards. Like a chain that has its own NFT standard can make an XCM interface for it. And then instead of actually taking those NFTs and pushing them to another chain, you can just use XCM to conduct all of your operations in that original chain, using that XCM pattern. So that way you can have everything working how expected, but you don't have to settle on one thing. You don't have to pick and choose. You don't have to kill features from one to be compatible with the other. We can just make it so every NFT standard is usable by anyone.
Okay, thank you. A little bit slightly different perspective from the two different teams, but that's one of the nice things about Polkadot, right? Is that we can have different perspectives, and all of us are working on slightly different things. So we have about 5 minutes left. So I see already some hands raised before I even said we're taking questions. I could have said I was going to rap for a while, but why don't we just have some questions here answered here?
Yeah, good morning. Hello. So if I think about the NFT, I see it as the digital representation of an object controlled by the owner. And in this context, I think the digital identity of this owner is really important. So, Greg, you mentioned you could represent this digital identity as an NFT per itself. I don't necessarily agree. So I would like to ask here the other on the podium, how do you think about the concept of digital identity in conjunction with NFTs?
Yeah, so I guess the question is, how do you see the concept of digital identity and how it relates to NFTs specifically?
I can try answering this one, yeah. NFTs can represent different aspects of digital identity. For example, I can have my passport data as NFT encrypted. I can have, I don't know, my social security number also encrypted as a passport. And I can choose what I disclose by sharing my keys, the encryption, well, the key for encryption, for decrypting the data. And I can nicely automate this or represent it by nesting all aspects of my digital identity under my general NFT that represents myself, for example.
Do either other teams want to add on or have their...
Yeah, and I would like also to add, we can have an identity document, but we can also have things like you can certificate that you have this kind of diploma, and with this kind of things you don't have, you can see lies on the curriculum vitae, basically, and with NFT you can't lie. If some kind of authority is delivering you one certificate as a soul-bound token, for example, then you can transfer it and you can be sure that you pass this certification, it has not been forged, so it kind of relates to the DID also.
All right, we have about 2 minutes left, so I think time for one more question. Yeah.
All right. Oh, great microphone, by the way. This is Gökberk from the SnapMuse.io team. I have one question. So NFTs were a big part of the latest bull run in Web3, right? And the reason why NFTs played that role is because they were artistic digital images with cutting-edge promises, utilities, if you will, and that promised cutting-edge value gave them. The cutting-edge promises gave them a speculative value. That speculative value drew a lot of people in the Web3. Now, we all hope that the promised utilities will catch up with the speculative value so that there's the gap between speculation and reality narrows, but it didn't happen. So what happened is that people started leaving. Now, during the next bull run, as an ecosystem, we need to provide real utility. We can't go with speculation again. The big elephant in the room here is the divide between real-world experiences, assets, and NFTs. Of course, we all want to sell our cars using NFTs. We want to digitize our, put on the blockchain our passport information. But currently, there is no way of really tying these two ends together. And despite our best efforts, I don't think that's still a possibility. Now, the question is, how do you think we will mend this? How do you think we will bridge this gap between what's tangible and the NFTs? Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess to sum up the question, and I see we have a very short amount of time, is how exactly are we going to bridge that gap between your real-world utility and simply like on-chain representations and your price talk, right?
Well, basically, you need to have an NFT with real utility. There is speculation when the gap is really big when the speculation is high because there is nothing else besides your profile picture, for example. When the bull run is done, you have no use except showing it on Twitter. But if you have, for example, one interesting use case is when people want to make an investment, want to do a fundraising, today we can make that fundraising as an NFT and fractionalize it and give a share to every stakeholder, for example. That is one use case NFT, and there is no speculation in that because there is a real use case. You are holding shares of a company, for example, and you are not just buying it to selling to someone at a higher price. And basically, if you remove that concept of speculation, the gap, there will still be speculation in any project, but the gap will be significantly lower as you add utility to this NFT. Because the price of the NFT will be tied to its utility in the end, in my opinion.
I see we're out of time, but maybe Greg or Gabe, do you have something to add very quickly before we end?
I really like this solution. Yeah, it's really human work to bridge that gap, and the way to involve people in this is taken, yes.
All right, well, thank you all for showing up, and thank you all for listening and for the questions. I know there were still some hands raised. I'm sure that any of these people will be happy to answer your questions if you see them around Sub0, or if you want to ask me a question, although I'm not as much of an NFT expert as any of them. So all right, well, thank you very much.